Hello again, everyone. This is a companion piece to my video from yesterday, reading the introduction to the Encyclopedia of Supervillains by Jeff Rovin. Today I'm reading the introduction to the Encyclopedia of Superheroes by Jeff Rovin. I failed to mention yesterday that both these books were published in 1984. So, as much as I greatly value these books, and they have taught me a lot, and they mean a lot to me, and I think the lessons in them really hold up, of course, the landscape of superheroes and supervillains as a whole has definitely changed over the past nearly 40 years. Both these books are almost 40 years old. It's pretty crazy to think about. But with that, I'm going to get straight into it. I apologize, some of my pronunciation skills are off. There are a lot of complicated words in these books that many might find unfamiliar and that I did struggle with. In the earliest days, we called them gods. Egypt was one of the earliest cultures to chronicle the exploits of superpowered figures. The success of their civilization permitted it, nourished by the Nile, protected north, south, east, and west by water or desert. They were prosperous and had the time to evolve an elaborate culture. Religion was a part of that culture, and splendid beings of incredible powers were a part of their religion. The earliest of the supernormal human Egyptian figures was Neph, the ram-headed deity who was thought to create humans as well as the other gods. While this kind of power is beyond that of our modern superheroes, Neph did make an important contribution to the genre. He is the oldest known super being to have had another identity, sometimes masquerading as Nophis, the potter. Neph and the other Egyptian mythologicals may have been first, they were not unique. All nations, whether by assimilation or independently, came up with gods. Some, commencing with the Babylonians, also came up with superhumans. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, composed circa 2000 BC, the great king of Erech was 2/3 god, 1/3 human, and so powerful that it took the gods themselves to shape a rival to oppose him. The legendary Persian leader, Husung, was a superhuman monster slayer. India's morally flawless Rama was a great archer and warrior. China's Hou Qi, founder of the Zhou dynasty, was born in the footprint of a god, and thus became like a god. The Polynesian hero Mathura tattooed his body with a distinctive design and went to the underworld to rescue his lover. The archangels Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel of Hebrew lore comprise what could be considered the first team of superheroes, moving among humans and possessing specific powers of peace, healing, strength, and nature, respectively. Indeed, without trivializing Gabriel, he was the forerunner of the modern-day angel Human Torch, both beings consisting of fire. While these and many other figures from mythology and lore may, at first glance, appear to be superheroes, very few of them actually deserve this lofty status. It's not that they aren't heroic, it's simply that to be classified as a superhero, a personality must meet various rigorous criteria. In the realm of superheroes, these factors are usually true. Superheroes have at least one superpower, whether physical or attributable to a weapon, instrument, or conveyance. They work actively and magnanimously for the common good. Their values are neither vindictive nor selfish. They tend to operate on Earth, though they may not be from this world. They achieve anonymity by assuming a mortal identity or alter ego, and they wear a distinctive costume. Having said that, drawing parameters for the superheroes act into setting up definitions and hierarchies in any field. There will always be exceptions, paradoxes, and prejudices. Excuse me. The list of characters who are not quite superheroes contains some of the most revered heroes in history, and their absence deserves some explanation. For example, few figures are as brave or powerful as the Greek prince Achilles. Invulnerable in all but his heel, he was able to kill wild animals with his bare hands and was peerless in battle. At At the same time, Achilles was ruthless, vengeful, and had a vicious temper. A super being? Yes. But a superhero? No. In American folklore, Davy Crockett had strength and courage non-parallel, though animal rights activists would find him objectionable. I catch told and pulled the wolf's tail. He jumped and twitched and tried to get away and screeched like a dying hawk. Likewise, good and benevolent heroes like Indiana Jones of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Artagonon of the Three Musketeers, and Edgar Rich Burroughs' John Carter of Mars present a problem. While they may be a bold adventurer, soldier, and warrior, respectively, Jones is something of a self-centered bore who depends more on luck than on talent. The Argentin hasn't the character or wit of his fellow musketeers, while they in turn lack his idealism. And Carter, though superpowered on Mars, is not extraordinary on Earth. Heroes like Buck Rogers, Sherlock Holmes, and James Bond also fall into this twilight zone of heroes, who aren't consistently super heroic. A fine but important distinction. On the other hand, the biblical personalities such as Moses had many of the qualities required of such superheroes, as did such figures as Merlin the Magician, Ulysses, and the American railroad legend John Henry. But these men, for all their virtues, each had a mission, a kind of partisanship which, however well-meaning, is anathema to the superhero. The superhero must function like the Secretary General of the United Nations, working for the good of everyone without forcing their judgments on anyone. Without debating his rationale, Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and there remained not so much as one Egyptian. For his part, the Lone Ranger never killed a soul. Moses may have been a prophet, but Ranger Reed is a saint and a superhero. Again, one can't classify superheroes with the finicky detachment of an etymologist distinguishing between varieties of insects. Subjectivity must be used in classifying superheroes, which is why such figures as Conan, Tarzan, Robin Hood, and Samson are present in this volume. Conan the Barbarian spent a great deal of time as a pirate, Tarzan viciously tormented natives, Robin Hood was a criminal by English law, and Samson was fond of hedonistic pursuits. Yet the mythic qualities, physical talents, and/or historic significance of these and other personalities are so striking as to outweigh the drawbacks. Another problem in defining superheroes is the place of the superheroic parodies, the misfits like Captain Klutz and White Feather, and the animals like Mighty Mouse and Thunder Bunny. Most people in distress, if they had the option, would likely prefer to have Davy Crockett or Molly Pitcher come to the rescue instead of the fumbling Captain Nice. But with a kind of dogged goodness, these animal and comedic superheroes do invariably triumph. It is interesting to note that infallibility is not a required site of canonization. Batman has had a nervous breakdown, Iron Man suffered from alcoholism for years, and Speedy was a junkie. No one's perfect. Not even a superhero. Indeed, it can be argued persuasively that while Captain Guts has the stouter limbs, Fat Man has the stouter heart. As for animals, since Superman and John Jones are humanoid but not demonstrably human, and the Hulk and the Thing mutated monsters, it would be cavalier to deny the anthropomorphic Super Chicken his place in the pantheon. Bias because of phylum has no place in the enlightened universe of the superhero. Despite the prevalence of super beings in mythology, and the many classic characters that have come to us from literature, radio, pulp magazines, comic serials, movie serials, and television, the bulk of the superheroes we know and love were born and raised in comic books. Clearly, comic book publishers didn't invent superheroes. What they did was to take the baton which had been passed from religion to mythology to folklore to literature to the pulps, magazines which prospered in the 1920s and 1930s and were slightly larger than digest size, printed on extremely cheap paper, and featured such two-fisted characters as Doc Savage and G8. Because comic book publishers had eye-catching color at their disposal, they dressed their characters in circus-like or skin-tight costumes, the latter reminiscent of the lorica of ancient Rome, which fit like a second skin, and attracted young readers by the millions. During the late 1930s and throughout the 1940s, literally hundreds of superheroes could be found on the newsstands each and every month. This era of prosperity has become to be known as the Golden Age of Comics, a period which ended early in the 1950s, as TV captured the attention of the young, and only a handful of legends like Superman and Batman survived. However, thanks primarily to the efforts of editor Julius Schwartz at DC, home of Superman, DC stands for Detective Comics, the original home of Batman, a Silver Age dawned in 1956 with a fresh version of the Golden Age staple, The Flash. What science fiction buff Schwartz did with The Flash, as well as with the years that followed, was to make them products of super science, bringing readers back into the fold by capitalizing on the widespread awareness of, and fascination with, nuclear power, artificial satellites, and UFOs. Wanting to use a lot of the Golden Age names like The Flash, Green Lantern, and the Atom, Schwartz and his colleagues at DC Comics also came up with the notion of the parallel worlds of Earth 1 and Earth 2. Earth 1 being our world, the world of the new heroes, and Earth 2 being the home of their Golden Age counterparts. Unfortunately, over the years, as DC acquired characters which had belonged to other companies, more and more other dimensional Earths had to be created to accommodate the traffic and explain why these characters had never met in their original incarnations. Eventually, the interdimensional turnpikes got so crowded that in 1984 to 85, DC cleared up the mess by destroying all but Earth 1, aka Earth Prime, along with a gaggle of several of the worlds and heroes in a 12-issue comic book called Crisis on Infinite Earths. Wonderfully conceived, the series allowed virtually every DC character from the Stone Age to the future to put in an appearance. If comic book literature can be said to have a counterpart to the crowded Russian novels last century, Crisis on Infinite Earths is it. For further information on Crisis on Infinite Earths, check out Linkara's video from Atop the Fourth Wall, as seen in the iCard. Following Schwartz's lead of getting in tune with the times, writer-editor Stan Lee at Marvel Comics did its competitors one better. Beginning with the Fantastic Four and the Amazing Spider-Man in 1961-1962, he gave the world superheroes with problems and a sense of verisimilitude. Lee's superheroes caught colds, frequently bowed out of social engagements to fight crime, had to mend their own costumes by hand, and couldn't cash checks made out to their superheroic identities. Readers responded to these everyman heroes, and Lee, in tandem with artists Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, made Marvel the most viable and successful superhero shop in history, a position it retains nearly a quarter century later under the able leadership of Jim Shooter. Few facets of world culture have embodied the sense of wonder found in the exploits of our superheroes. While there is no substitute for the first-hand material, the text strives to distill those qualities which make each character so compelling or unique. To this end, each entry has been subdivided as follows. Alter ego, the identity each hero uses to move through the world incognito. First appearance, the year and the name of the magazine and publisher, movie and studio, book and author, etc. of the character's debut. Note, DC Comics and Marvel Comics have gone by various names over the years, the latter having had nearly 50 separate imprints as well. In the interest of clarity, these have been omitted. Occupation, what the character does when he, she, it is not fighting wrongs. Costume, a brief description of the hero's fighting attire. Note that a bodysuit is form-fitting, while a jumpsuit is a looser garment. A bodysuit is also form-fitting. The t-shirt is the same, but with short sleeves. Tools and weapons, catalog of the character's armaments, equipment, and vehicles. Biography, the superhero's life story and a description of their powers. Quote, profound or characteristic declarations from the lips of the superhero. Comment, any additional information, such as the number of titles in a magazine's run, and notable cross-references. If a character does not have a costume, alter ego, or the like, none is written beside it. However, in some cases, such as the alter ego of Gypsy, with a background of the Golden Archer, too, the information has not been yet revealed or fleshed out. In other cases, a number of comic books proved impossible to track down. Comic books were not printed with posterity in mind, and accordingly, few copies of certain titles have survived. Many of those fragile copies which do still exist are valued at several $1,000s each, causing their owners to be understandably skittish about making them available for research. It is hoped that the gaps which do appear in the text will be filled in further editions of the Encyclopedia. Additionally, beside the name of each character's parenthetical notation of the media in which they made significant appearances. A. Advertising. C. Comic book stories or comics in the storybook or stories in the comic book format. CG. Computer or video game. CS. Comic strip. F. Folklore mythology. M. Magazine other than a pulp publication or comic book. MP. Motion picture. N. Novel, either adult or juvenile. P. Pulp magazine. R. Radio. RA. Radio album. Record album. T. Toy. And TV. Television. Finally, if more than one characters had the same name, the two are distinguished by a parenthetical number following their names. The lower the number, the earlier the character. Rounding out the book are the appendices. These are A. The membership rosters and stories behind the forming of the various superhero teams. B. Obscure Golden Age superheroes from brief comic books. C. Foreign superheroes, a random sampling of the best and/or most interesting superheroes from abroad. D. Minor superheroes, characters who appeared only once or twice. E. Heroes from DC Comics' Hero Abundant Dial H for Hero series. Throughout the text, if a character's name is italicized, it means that the superhero has its own entry in either the main body of the text or in appendices B, C, or D. Incidentally, a handful of admittedly very minor one-shot heroes have been given major entries up front. It may be difficult to justify full-scale entries on Supermarket Man or Super Pickle from a historical standpoint. However, they certainly deserve some kind of notoriety for being one-of-a-kind superheroes.